Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to try and race through what is the race of our lives. So climate change is a race between climate solutions and greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm a lifelong sustainability person. I remember 25, 30 years ago being asked, is it a proper job that you have? And now finally we've caught up with that. I launched an organization called the Climate Group, 2004. Sir Tony was launched that for us and actually led the Leadership Council. I've been CSO in IKEA, Chief Sustainability Officer, and I'm in an investment firm, Temasek, out of Singapore today. So I'm a business leader, climate scientist, activist, investor. First of all, who here, show of hands, who is familiar with the word Anthropocene? Getting better? So I'd say that's 20%. It's a really important word, the Anthropocene, and it's really to say we're in a new geological era where actually humanity is the force shaping the world. 8 billion people. It's taken us all of human history to produce 1 trillion cubic meters of stuff in the built environment, plastics, steel, cement, etc. 1 trillion cubic meters, all of human history. The pace of the global economy and 8 billion people today, we do the next 1 trillion cubic meters in 20 years. So we double human history's impact. We've reshaped the world. We've declined biodiversity by 70%. We've halved the amount of nature in the world, or more than halved it. We've kind of given the world to cows to some extent. If you actually look at agricultural land, there was a study that looked at the weight of all the mammals in the world recently, and it found that actually wild mammals were just 4%. People were 36% of mammals by weight. Livestock was 60%. So cows and pigs, etc., outnumber all the wild mammals 15 to 1, or outweigh them. Transformed the world. It's the Anthropocene. Climate change, this is the doom and gloom stuff. We will move on to solutions, but it is really the race of our lives. So actually I was just looking, it was 37 degrees in Tokyo today. In the last month, 1/3 of the US population has been advised to stay indoors because of extreme heat. 5 Indian states had temperatures over 45 degrees. That's now in June. We've had 1.2 degrees warming. We've got 7 or 8 years of carbon budget left before we've blown the budget to stay under 1.5 degrees. About 20 years to stay under 2 degrees. Now those extreme heat wave events, if you think, what does it mean? How much more extreme weather are we getting? Well, a 50-year event is now a 1 in 10-year event. What was a 50-year event? If we go to 2 degrees warming, it becomes a 1 in 3-year event, except it's more severe and hotter. That's just taking the heat waves. It's the same with floods. It's the same with wildfires. I think we're on the edge of flipping the Mediterranean ecosystems in the world, in the Mediterranean, in parts of Australia, in parts of California. We're flipping them into drier areas, and that's why we're seeing these extreme wildfires on a scale that we've not seen before. So we're in the era where actually you could say the mega trend, we've heard about digitization, climate change and sustainability are a mega trend that are going to reshape the 21st century. Fortunately, we have a lot of solutions. And we're starting to deploy them at scale. But it is a race. You could say net zero is the new normal. So there's about 3,000 businesses, 450 investors in capital market. Mark Carney launched GFANZ at Glasgow, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. Trillions of dollars committed to net zero, and actually meaningful targets starting to be set by that. We've also seen 128 governments, countries around the world set net zero targets. So it means net zero is the new normal. We've got a gap, though, between those high ambitions and actions today. And we need to close that gap. The line that goes up is developed. This was specifically Tony's request to put this slide in. The line going up shows developing country emissions. The line that's starting to go down is the developed world emissions. So you can see around about 2008, they crossed over. And this is as the developing world comes out of poverty, Their share of historical emissions is tiny, it has to be said. But as people come out of poverty, emissions rise. We need a global solution, and this is why in Paris there was on the table, there was 100 billion a year of climate finance committed from the developed world for the developing world. It's still not there yet. We're 5 years behind schedule to get climate finance away. So we need a global solution on this, on the problem, and we do need the sort of response of the international community we've seen through the UNFCCC. You could say Glasgow was a step forwards, but probably a 6 out of 10 because we didn't solve climate finance. There's a mindset shift in this. You know, I think we've moved forwards now. We've actually gone beyond the do we need to do something about it to how do we do it, how do we deploy capital, how do we unlock innovation. And realistically, if you look at the scale and pace of the challenge, we need a combination of things. We need good government policy and business innovation and investment. Those are the two things we need in tandem. Solar, we've heard that this is a biological century. It's also a solar century. Solar's incredible. We're seeing tremendous developments. We've just had 1 trillion watts of solar installed, almost a solar panel for every man, woman, and child alive. It's taken about 70 years for solar to get to that scale. The next 1 trillion watts happens in 4 years. So it's a solar century. The left-hand chart here shows the price improvement. You don't have to read the numbers. Basically, in 45 years, solar became 400 times cheaper. 400 times cheaper. It's breathtakingly cheap today in many parts of the world. It's even practical in the UK, where we're not particularly sun-rich as a nation. Wind. I mean, we might, as the UK, like to be sort of blessed with sun. We're actually blessed with wind. We've got 40% of Europe's wind reserve in the UK. It's a strategic asset. And if you think of the 20th century, the strategic assets were the things that were under the ground. It was about oil and coal and natural gas. Now it's about the things above ground. It's about nature as a platform for new businesses. It's about the sun and the wind. We've got, if you also think from this, we've got 5 billion years of sun reserves. There is no peak sun. We've got infinite wind reserves in the UK. Now, the UK has done a good job to access wind overall, long-term climate policy support. But there was a hiatus where actually onshore wind farms, there was a 5-year planning restraint just recently there, which actually halted things. One estimate suggests energy bills would have been £100 cheaper today for most people across the UK if we'd not had that pause. As government, and we said this when, with the G8 a long time ago, we did a business conference with the G8 and we said, what do we need? We need long, loud, legal policy. So business isn't afraid of regulation, they're not afraid of carbon prices, but you want long-term predictability and the ability to actually plan for the future. If you look at the rest of the built environment that we have, there's incredible new technologies coming through. So there's companies that can produce steel with no emissions, green steel. Green hydrogen will, in all of the countries assessed, actually be at cost parity from an energy point of view by 2030, in some countries by 2025. So hydrogen made from water with renewable energy. Cement that's got zero emissions. But how do we get these to scales? When this is the race of our lives, when we've got 7 or 8 years of carbon budget left before we blend the budget for 1.5 degrees, we need every tool in the toolbox. We need public procurement, we need taxation, we need fiscal measures, we need to look at demand signals, and we need to look at regulation. When I was in IKEA, we decided voluntarily, we were selling a few thousand LED bulbs and lots of halogens, which were kind of heaters. They were mislabeled as light bulbs, they were really heaters, they were so inefficient. And we saw the future was LEDs, so we self-banned 3 years ahead and said we'll go all in for LEDs. It was interesting, when you go all in, and this is the mindset we need to do now, we need to go all in for the future. Set 100% targets, 100% renewable energy, 100% EVs, 100% energy efficient homes. It unlocked huge advantages for us because we put all of our innovation and all of our effort behind the future. We weren't defending the legacy industries or the legacy technology of the past, we were building the future. And that's the mindset we need to do. interestingly enough, IKEA sold 500 million LEDs by 2020 as a result of that. It was a successful business strategy as well as one that benefited customers. We saw from the Independent Commission on Climate Change yesterday, it came out actually and said, actually on energy efficiency, we're not doing anywhere near enough in the UK to insulate people's homes. And with high energy prices today, half of our building stock is almost uninsulated. 3/4 of it is poorly insulated. Just going up from G, each category saves you £250 to £300 a year, going from G to F to E to D to C to B to A. And we need really to lean in and use everything in our possible. It saves people money, people have warmer homes and money to spend elsewhere. We've already heard about Elon Musk. It's interesting, the electric vehicle revolution is exciting. I sat about 15 years ago with the chief technology officer of a European auto manufacturer who will remain nameless. And I said, aren't EVs the future? Really? And he slapped the table and he said, never while I am CTO of this business will we produce an electric vehicle. And he was right because he's no longer the CTO. And you can see the inevitability of technology like this. But again, how do we get there faster and how do we create access for more people to have the benefits of EVs? Because you can see, actually, people who are on, it's still cheaper to get an internal combustion engine that's 10 years old today, and it will be for some time, so we have to look at that. And how do we have a charging network that's available for people everywhere? But the internal combustion engine, you could say the end of the ice age is nigh. You can see the developments in terms of batteries. This is it basically shows that for a kilowatt hour of battery storage, it's actually just over $100 for a kilowatt hour today, when if you go back to 92, it was $5,000. Economies of scale count, and this is when you get public policy, business innovation and investment. Low tech. Bikes have been around. We don't need everything. I was really inspired, actually, over lunch to talk to Mette from Hackney, because I've just spent 10 years in the Netherlands. And the Netherlands, in the 1970s, did this massive push into cycling as a response to the high oil prices. And actually, people cycle 15 billion kilometers in a small country, 15 billion kilometers. The average person cycles 1,000 kilometers a year. It's the only country in Europe which isn't getting more obese. When everybody cycles, 2% of people don't like it. 2% of people don't like free money. If you think, 98% of people like it, 60% of people express joy. Why we have 27% of road journeys in the Netherlands by bike, 2% in the UK. Hackney, 38% of commuting. Well done, Hackney, on that. So this is possible. We have the levers to do it. It's about deciding to do it. So we need to rethink the possible. I just have to go on about the cycling story. 14 months a year extra life for people from regular cycling, potentially. Live longer, be happier, save money, save the climate. Plant-based food. Michael Pollan, the author, said it very well. He said, eat food, not too much, mostly plants. So the food system really isn't fit for purpose. We need to reinvent the food system. But we also need a big shift to a more plant-based diet. 20% of greenhouse gas emissions are coming from livestock. We feed more human edible protein to livestock than we get back as human edible protein. We divert 40% of crops and grain to feed cows and pigs and chickens. 70 billion livestock a year. You can see a revolution in this. There's now 624, there'll be more today. That was the last number I could see. 624 startups actually developing, whether it's Impossible Burgers, which I have to say Temasek's an investor in, or I've got IKEA veggie balls down there as well. But an incredible revolution in the choice of plant-based foods. And again, this is healthier, more sustainable, but radically different. What this will do for us, and this is the National Food Strategy, the Independent National Food Strategy, the Dimbleby report, an excellent report, suggested a 30% reduction in meat by 2030, which Sounds radical, but when we're actually getting, you can see much more people that are interested in flexitarians, veganism, vegetarianism, just some selection of more plant-based diet, especially younger generations. 25% of the people in the UK currently say they're choosing that. More than 60% of people are open to actually more plant-based sources in their meals. More availability actually feeds it. I think we could go beyond 30%, but just 30% would give us 1 million hectares of land back for other choices. 1 million hectares, we've only got 25 million in the UK. It would give us 1 million back, 6 times the area of Greater London. So if we think about it, there is no business as usual. We've all got to embrace change, go all in, 100%. It's about long, loud, and legal policy. It's about better. It's better choices. It's about joy, healthier diets, cheaper homes to run, and it's about rethinking the possible. Thank you.